Hi everyone. It's so good to see you. I'm so excited for tonight's show. It's gonna be amazing. So, hi friends. It's my favorite part, saying hi to everybody. Hi everyone. Thanks for joining. It's so good to see everyone. Hi. This is like my favorite time of the week. It truly, truly is. Hi. Hey girl.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. You know this is my moment. This is my favorite
I
time of
know
the live.
I was watching you pop off before I got in. I was like, let's just let her cook. Just
I
let her
love
go.
it. I love it. I love it.
I know
Oh,
you
people
do.
are always so sweet to us.
They
Okay, I'm
really
gonna bring.
are.
I mean, it's like the best. This is legitimately my favorite time. I'm just gonna send some hearts.
Oh,
Okay,
your
I'm
olive
gonna bring.
sweater. It's iconic.
Thank you. Isn't this the cutest? My 14-year-old was like, "What?
No, I
What's
love it.
happening with this?" Yeah, it was like, don't question this, don't
Mm-mm,
question this choice. Yeah.
mm-mm.
So, anyway, okay, I'm going to bring Summer in and, all that good stuff. Hi, everyone. Hi, Spotify. So excited. The show is sponsored again by Spotify. If you have not looked into them, if you have not tried the platform, please do. You can try it for free. It's amazing. It truly
It
is
is.
amazing. Like one-stop shop. Oh, so sweet. Hello, loves. So kind. Okay. Summer, we're going to bring her on in. Yes, we are glad to be like healthy
I
right
know.
now.
I'm like 97% recovered.
Right. Although I liked your raspy voice.
I know. I kind of dug it too for a little bit. Hi, Summer.
Hey,
Hi, ladies. How
Summer.
are you?
I'm good.
Good.
How are you?
Good. Happy to be
Good.
here.
It's so
Yeah.
good
No.
to see you.
Yes. We're so nice to meet you.
Yes, you too. Both of you too. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. We're just grateful for you to join us, especially during like this crazy holiday season. Like December is always the month that like
I
I blink
know.
and it's over, you know?
Completely. Yeah,
Yes.
still panicking about the shopping. Panic
Oh my
shopping
gosh.
really is what's going on.
Same. Same. And then I like
Yeah,
completely go overboard and then every year I say I'm not going to do it and then I do it and then I'm like, great, why did I
totally.
do it again? Yep. I
Totally.
think it's just part of it.
Well, your job, Summer, like it never stops. Family law never truly stops, right?
It's
So, like,
true. I will say the divorce world is quiet during the holidays because
oh,
everybody's really kind of hanging on and trying to get through sometimes one last holiday, and then in
Yes.
January we just get slammed.
Yep.
So there is a
Just
little bit of a respite in the holidays, which is kind of nice.
yeah. Well, January is like one of the divorce months, right? Like, is that when you see like a major uptick from in your
January, September, when school starts and schedules become hectic again, we get a lot then too. So
yeah.
there's definitely different patterns.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's so
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
we're
Okay. Well,
very
I'm sure you get used to it. So, but we appreciate you taking time during the slow period. Who knew that this was going to be the right window? But we're so glad that
Yeah,
it is.
absolutely. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
yes.
All right, I'm gonna let Hillary take it away. Hillary's gonna
Yeah.
introduce you to all of
Yes.
our friends,
Yeah.
which we
So
appreciate them being here. And Summer, they're everywhere. Like they're in Milwaukee, and New
Okay.
York, and the UK, and Australia. Like this is the most amazing community. It truly, truly is. And so, anyhow, someone just asked, will you be addressing co-parenting and custody changes today? We sure will. So
Sure.
drop your questions. But I'm gonna kick it over to Hillary so
yep.
she
I'm
can
just gonna
formally.
read your bio so that everybody knows how amazing you are. Summer Abel is an LGBTQ plus family law attorney specializing in all areas of family law. As a member of the LGBTQ plus community, Summer is passionate about supporting families of all types. She recognizes the unique challenges that each family faces, and she leverages her personal and professional experiences to guide clients through these challenges, aiming to achieve the best possible outcomes.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, I mean, so we're going to start. I mean, really, I mean, as a family lawyer, you help people through like the deeply personal issues of marriage and relationship dissolution and custody. And as you and I talked about before, like, many of these issues are the same. Whatever, whether you're a heterosexual couple or same-sex couple, doesn't really matter. But can you tell us like why within this field you've developed a specialty and focus area for LGBTQ plus individuals?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just going back to your point, luckily, where we are sort of in the political landscape, or at least somewhat, a lot of the divorce laws, now that same sex marriage is legal, which we'll get to the nuance there, but the divorce laws are roughly the same, which is good, right? So LGBTQ plus members are treated the same way in terms of the law, and their marriage in the divorce world. But when I started doing family law, I really wanted to target my services towards the LGBTQ plus community because as a member myself, it's important to me, for a number of reasons. I think family law is so deeply, deeply personal. I mean, you're in court and you're in front of a judge and you have those aspects, but you're really sharing about your life, about your family, about the closest things to you. And you want somebody that understands your family, right? I mean, there are plenty of people who can tell your story and tell your narrative, but somebody that really can empathize on that level and sort of shares that experience. From in my instance, I'm a two mom household, and I represent a lot of other lesbians with the same circumstances, similar circumstances, because it's very personal to me. I understand the roles, I understand, in other elements, pronouns, things like that. So I think that it's really helpful for people to have someone sort of with that familiarity. And then another reason is I really went into this because I got married about 8 years ago in 2018. And when my wife and I were kind of embarking on the daunting task that is wedding planning in Florida, we were living in Florida at the time, we were really nervous about reaching out to vendors. We didn't know if they would turn us away, if we would experience that kind of issue. And luckily, we got looped into this network of several vendors that just catered to the LGBTQ plus community. They all did same-sex weddings. So we had just a referral network of photographers, wedding planners, catering companies, things like that. And we thought this is really great. We got so much value out of it. And I really wanted to bring that to my own practice. So I work a lot collaboratively with other professionals. I work with accounting firms, real estate agents, mental health professionals. I mean, it's a big team. A divorce takes a really big team of professionals, and I really try to team up sort of with professionals that also have LGBTQ plus, marketing or, catering to the community so that people can feel like they have a similar referral source.
Yeah. That's wonderful. And it really comes down to like values alignment, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
for any choice that you're making like this as someone who's going to be intimately involved in your life in the future, that value alignment piece is critical, whether it's a
Exactly.
professional or someone you're dating, right?
Exactly.
So, well, you alluded to, I think what is one of the most important topics that we can address, and that is, the and so thankfully the Supreme Court has decided or declined to review the legality of it for now. But can you talk about what the impact of having marriage equality, like how it would be, how same-sex marriages could be impacted if marriage equality is overturned?
Yeah, so we saw a lot of this a couple years ago when Roe v. Wade was overturned. And the big issue there was that a lot of states, so that was overturned at the federal level, right, abortion. And when that happened, a lot of states had what we've kind of heard in the news referred to as trigger laws. They never changed their laws because the federal law was the law of the land and it sort of usurped all the state laws. So they didn't really have to change their state laws, right? And so when that got overturned, those state laws just went into effect. And some states rolled them back, some didn't, as we've seen. And it became an issue for a lot of people. That would be the same thing if
Oh no.
same-sex marriage, Obergefell is the case, if that got overturned. we would see a number of states that would have bans on same-sex marriage, and those laws would now be suddenly in effect. Now, whether those individual states want to go out of their way and amend their constitutions to change them, some of them have, we've seen them do that because of this issue. But that would really be the concern. And then people could no longer get married in their chosen state, in the state where they live. And, you know, sure, they can travel elsewhere and do that, kind of like we've seen with abortion laws and things like that. But it would really be really sad, quite frankly, to see that happen, because we wouldn't have the same protections in every state. And that, of course, trickles down to parentage and things like that, states not recognizing parentage based on what they consider to be an invalid marriage.
Yeah, I mean, and it just sounds chaotic, because I imagine, like, even if you had to, if you have to travel to another state to get married, but you live, I mean, your whole life is in another, you know, is somewhere else. You know, I don't even know, you know, how all of that would come together. So, yeah, it would
Right.
be
And
a
even
sad
if you
thing.
do get married legally in another state, who's to say you'll have the recognition in the state that you live in? Right. So
Mhm.
if I go to the state next door and get married and then I continue to live where I'm
Hmm.
living, I don't know if they're going to recognize my marriage in certain situations if my wife is in the hospital, or, you know, things of that nature, like where, you know, it's really important to have that recognition.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that just puts just so much extra pressure on it, you know, so much extra, like, you know, just defense, like almost defensiveness, I would think, like
Right.
just, you know, not really knowing how, where, you know, where having to follow the law, first of all,
Right.
is exhausting, to try to figure out where certain things are legal and not legal. And so, yeah, it just creates some challenges. Now, are there any important, now going back to divorce, are there any important distinctions in the divorce world for same-sex couples?
Not a ton. So I in Maryland, and I should caveat, I know you have listeners and followers everywhere. I practice in Maryland and DC. So a lot of what I'm talking about is specific to those jurisdictions, just because that's sort of my knowledge base. Um, you know, although I mean, I know generally as well, but in Maryland, at least, right, there are laws when you get divorced, it's an equitable state, which means the property is not necessarily divided equally, it's divided equitably. So there's a number of factors that the court looks at to determine what is equitable. In terms of a same-sex marriage, I would argue in certain cases that, you know, because same-sex marriage has only been legal for 10 years, we have couples that have been, you know, committed to each other, right?
Hmm.
But for the laws, would have been married sometimes 20, 30 years. So when the court is looking at how to divide property, one of those factors is sort of a catch-all, right? Anything else the court should consider when determining how to divide the property? Well, that's where I like to throw in that argument. This couple's only been married for 10 years, but they've really been married for 30 years, because had they been
Hmm.
legally allowed to get married, they would have gotten married in 2001, you know, whatever it is. So you know, that's not really a specific kind of distinction, but I think that that's one of the things that being aware of that is important, so that you can sort of make those arguments and make sure that you're capturing what's equitable for somebody that might be in a same-sex marriage, but only on paper for 10 years, let's say, in this example.
Yeah. Do you find, just in general, that, like, in cases like that, people would rather not like go down that road, and they find alternative ways? Or, I mean, how much do you see that? I guess, how frequent is that you see someone that's been together for 20 years, and they have to detangle?
So you mean go down the road of getting a divorce?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, if they've been together since before marriage equality, like, how common is that
It's pretty
in your
common.
practice?
And what's sad is, you know, a lot of times if you're getting divorced, sometimes it's a divorce with dignity, right? They just grew apart and it's not nasty. But if it is a nasty divorce, sometimes people will sort of weaponize that. Well, we've only been married 10 years, so, you know, he's only entitled to my account from 2015. Well, he helped you through medical, I'm making this up, right? But like he helped you
Right.
through medical
Right.
school and paid for, you know, everything while you were you know, a starving student and yada yada for the past 25 years. It really is equitable that he should be, you know, allowed XYZ. And so sometimes people will weaponize the fact that the law is really not on our side with that. I don't know if that
Yeah.
answers your question,
Yeah.
but
Well, I think that that highlights too the importance of knowing those nuances, right? Like
right,
that's, a lawyer that might not specialize in LGBTQ plus,
right.
would rights would not probably not pick up on, or I mean, maybe they would, but I just think that that is just a really great example of why it's so important to have somebody that really understands the law like that.
Right, definitely. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the other area, like the adjacent to this, is like parental rights.
Yep.
Another very complex area where, okay, parental rights apply to anybody in divorce if you're a parent, right? You're going to talk about custody and so on and so forth. And there are many heterosexual couples who have been not a bio parent, but they've been a parent to a child, and they still want to be involved in that person's life. But I think that the nuance for LGBTQ plus parents, of course, is that someone may be the non-gestational or biological parent, but they're still very much the parent. And
Right.
so, why is it important to how do you navigate those things? I think is
Yeah.
my question ultimately.
So my biggest PSA to all same-sex couples that are having children is to get an adoption. No matter what, just do the adoption. It's called a second parent adoption or a step parent adoption. The only distinction there is whether or not you're married. You don't have to be married to adopt if you have a child with your partner. So getting that guarantees that, so we kind of talked about the whole federal law issue, right? But getting the adoption guarantees that in any state, this person is your child. The court has declared you to be the legal parent of this child, regardless of biology, regardless of who carried. And while it's a pain, a lot of states, I can at least speak for Maryland and DC, have really simplified the process. It's all through just electronic filing. They have eliminated a hearing, the requirement for a hearing. They've eliminated the requirement for a background check or an investigation, kind of those things that you would see if you were maybe adopting through an agency or something, or foster care. And so because they've recognized that this is really not that kind of adoption, right? This is just people that are having children through what we call ART, assisted reproductive technology. And so that's my biggest PSA in terms of parenting and family formation in the LGBTQ plus world. Now, in custody cases, the court will still hold a custody hearing, and you don't necessarily have to have the adoption to establish parentage. In most states, actually, there's something called the marital presumption. So the presumption is when you're married and you give birth, so let's say I'm giving birth, my spouse, regardless of gender, is presumed to be the other parent of the child. Okay. That presumption is rebuttable. So it can be rebutted by a third party if they were to bring on an action for parentage. There's a really good example of this that's actually very chilling. It's out of Oklahoma. The name is escaping me, and I apologize. It's like Williams v. Wilson or something. It's like two very similar W names. And it's two lesbians, and they had a baby using a sperm donor. It was a known donor. And so they had an agreement with him, and they signed a contract and everything. And eventually, the donor petitioned for custody, and he won against the non-bio mother. Now, the facts of this case are really unique. Like, the bio mom and the donor wound up in a relationship together. They actually had another kid together, sort of the natural way. And the mom, the non-bio mom and the bio mom were getting divorced, and it was really messy. So the facts were very unique. I don't think that normally go down that way, right? With like another sort of more mainstream same-sex couple. But the problem is that the Oklahoma court ruled in favor of the donor, and that set a terrible precedent for same-sex parents that use a donor, which is all of us, and are trying to establish parentage. So that was sort of a huge example of why it's extremely important to get an adoption. The non-bio mom did not have an adoption in this case, and had she had one, that would have completely eliminated that problem. And this was just in like 2022, I think.
Wow. I was just going to ask when
Yeah,
that occurred.
it was
That
very
is
recent.
terrifying. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And I'm also curious, like at any point in the like in the art process, like
Mhm.
is this a step that people are talking about? Because I mean, one of the things we love about our work and what we try to do is like amplify issues that like just go unacknowledged or like that are not discussed. But I mean, I know that like in the excitement of the idea of child rearing and
Yeah,
bringing a child into the world, there's so many other things to think about, right? Like if you have to take fertility shots and the
right,
egg and the this and picking a donor, like
right.
like is there a checklist for someone somewhere that's like, hey, by the way, you need to do this? Because I don't know, would it just naturally occur to someone to do that?
A lot of people, I'm surprised. I get surprised sometimes, or maybe I'm just jaded because people will say that never occurred to me. And of course, I think about it every day. I do it for a living.
Right.
I did it for my own children, right? I mean, my wife and I each carried one, and we adopted the other. So it's very mainstream to me. I recognize that it's an added expense for people, and it's an added thing on the checklist, like you mentioned, Bethany. Like all the things that go into this family formation. The last thing you want to have to do is, okay, now I have to shell out money to have a lawyer help me adopt my own kid. It's very annoying. I acknowledge that. But until the laws catch up to where they need to be, which unfortunately has not happened, and people still keep raising these issues, and like example, the Oklahoma case, bad law is being made. It's just not worth the risk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that this also too goes into the larger discussion of all the things that we don't think about before entering a marriage. Just there's so many nuanced things
Yeah,
that we don't always consider when we go into it. And
right.
I just feel like this just is another layer of things that you have to think about. And it's just
Yeah.
wild when you're
And
on the other side of it and you're like seeing hindsight, as wishing it's something that you would have done. But
right.
I just
It
think that it's so
takes,
important we shed light on things like this.
yeah, it definitely takes all the sexiness out of it. And I always tell my
Yes.
clients that, like, this is like the least sexy child rearing
Right.
experience or family formation experience ever, but you might as well just get it all done.
Yep.
um,
Yep.
and
Yep.
and set your family up for success. I mean, I'm I'm segueing a little bit here, but I do the same thing. So I don't personally do estate planning, but my partner at my firm does. And we send each other's clients to each other, our LGBTQ plus clients, because estate planning is almost equally as important,
Yeah.
right? I mean, making sure that you have, everything sort of set up. I kind of made that, that example of like if my wife was in the hospital type thing. That's why you have estate planning. That way you're able to sort of have that queued up in case, Armageddon happens with the Supreme Court and what have you. That's all what all this stuff
Right.
is. The adoption too. It's all sort of just making sure we have belt and suspenders and everything is sort of in line.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, Matt, that's a really good segue to a question that we have from someone about estate planning and
Yeah.
preparing. So the question has to do with the person joining has cancer, and if she passes away, how can she set her family, or, up? I mean, she's got a co-parenting relationship with her ex-husband. But what are some of the things that she should be thinking about or that she can be doing to prepare, if that would happen, if she would pass
Um,
away?
Well, I'm sorry to hear that if she's listening. Um, Having a will is very important. And that's, I mean, really just in general, no matter who you are, it's important to have to skip the probate process, and just make sure that all of your intentions are known. So in the LGBTQ context, just since that's why we're here, I always advise setting up a will. I mean, whether you're married or not, in terms of inheritance rights, if you're not married, and I don't know a ton about estate planning, so I won't get too deep into this, but if you're not married, you can still will, you have a child with your partner, you can still will what you have to them. You can, even if you don't do the adoption, right? Like I just talked about, you can still settle that up in a will. If you're married, then everything's going to go to your spouse if you die without a will. And then depending on what state you're in, there's a whole thing about if it, what goes to your spouse, what percentage goes to your children. But just setting that up and making your intentions known at the outset of what you want your estate to go to, and then also guardianship if you have minor children, I think is really important.
Right. Because is it, I mean, again, I guess it could, like, this could be a question that maybe you don't have the answer to. I'm not trying
Why
to
not?
put you on the spot, but like, if you can, like, can you in your will, or can you establish that you would like someone else to be part of the parentage of your child after you've gone, you know again, I don't even know really how to phrase this question, but
Yeah.
something along the lines of, okay, I have a will, and I'm just talking about me for my own kids, right? And I say, well, I would like for them to still be involved with my biological family in some way, shape, or form, and now my co-parent, my ex, might say,
Right.
well, I don't have to do any of that, but is there something legal that could, ensure that that happens, right? Because we know that there's enough, like, high conflict relationships where an ex partner would just want to write off the other family, and maybe for good reason. I mean, I don't want to get into the nuance of that, but just that idea of, passing away and my kids not knowing their side, another side of the family. Is there any way to protect that?
Right. So you kind of hit on that. So if there is another living parent, that parent obviously would have custody of the children, unless there was some kind of unfitness determination by the court, right? But if that's not the case, then the children would go to that parent. You can put those wishes in a will, but there's no really
Yeah.
third party custody allowances. Now you can, I don't want to get too nuanced, but people can petition for what's called de facto parentage or some kind of custody if they're trying to claim the other party's unfit. But I think, Bethany, in terms of your question, it's just like to make sure that they're still spending time with that person. I think it's worth putting in there and making the person's intentions known. But in terms of enforceability, I'm not super sure that it is.
Right. And
Mm-hmm.
she commented that she's drafted her will to establish guardians of her son.
Yeah.
But the ex-husband wants to take full custody if she dies.
Okay.
So, yeah, so those are the nuances. Well, friend, we hope we're sending good vibes and
Yes.
prayers that you will be healthy and have a long future with your son, because this is very complicated, and I imagine it makes it additionally hard when you're navigating a health issue, to think through these things. Yeah. Okay. Um, all right. The next question. I'm sorry. I got distracted a little bit by that. But so, like, one of the other questions that we definitely want to ask, and we'll continue to bring in questions from other people. But as if what do you find that most LGBTQ clients maybe wish they would have known sooner, than for that they wish they would have known before they got this far into, whether it's marriage or whether it's parenting. But do you have clients that have basically said, I wish I would have known this, in particular, in addition to what we've already sort of talked about with the adoption? But is there anything else there that, like, the hidden topics, that people don't think about?
Yeah. So in terms of parentage, so one thing that I don't think people consider is really documenting your intentions when it comes to family building. So we don't usually think about that because we're not thinking about divorce, right? When we're starting a family, that's not on the forefront, nor should it be. But if you're not married, especially, and if you don't have the adoption, the court needs to look at something to sort of piece that together. And a lot of times they'll look at what was your intention when you were building this family. In fact, the adoption statute has two prongs. You're either married, and then that kind of checks that prong, or if you're not married, you have to present some kind of evidence that the two people intended to build this family together. That can be a signed agreement from the cryobank if it's a sperm, donation, a sperm donor bank. Making sure you're both on that paperwork, I guess, would be the practice pointer there. It can be anything as like all the way down to journal entries. I mean, whatever you have, to just show that no, we intended to do this together. Because the risk is, if that bio mom, I guess I'm using women a lot as an example, but if the birth parent suddenly, things go sour, they can say, no, this is my baby. Good luck. I have people call me all the time in that predicament, and of course they never foresaw that coming when they were setting out to build their family. And for whatever reason, they just weren't married, and that's fine. People decide not to get married all the time, but still want to have children. But I think it's important to set it up in a way that you're, especially if you're not the biological parent, you're involved in every step of the process in a documented way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there are so, I mean, again, so many considerations, so many questions. Like I think back to like my 23-year-old self when I got married, and like
Yeah.
I know.
I had no freaking clue what I was doing or what I should be asking about. And I mean, because I imagine that there are people, again, they get swept up in the emotion of it all, right? Whether it's like
Yeah.
wedding planning, as you talked about, or like, oh, we're gonna be a parent and we're having like the photo shoot, like everyone, it's like the
Right.
maternity shoot and all this kind of stuff. But I imagine, again, because I've been there, when a relationship goes south, people get really ugly.
They
Yeah.
do.
And that if you're not having a conversation, if you're the non-bio parent, that bio parent might be like, nope, I carry the child. I have more rights than you do. And they, again, they use that, or they think that
Right.
if that's not discussed before conflict arrives, that really is a challenge. And
Hmm.
that's horrible. That's horrible.
Yeah, it can be. I mean, I had a client recently call me in this exact situation. And I think I told Bethany this. I like to call it lesbians behaving badly, right? When all of a sudden, like the biological mother just decides this is her baby and takes off, and which is really unacceptable. And I think really, really bad for our community, and for the child, to be completely honest. But anyway, I had the client call and she didn't have anything. She didn't have a signed agreement. She didn't have the documentation I was talking about because, again, foresight, it's not really there. I mean,
Right.
in a lot of ways, maybe it shouldn't be. Um, and so I think we argued that she cut the umbilical cord. She was in the hospital room. She was the first one to hold the baby before the biological mother.
Right.
And you think a bunch of other things, but sort of things like that I was able to take testimony on, in order to establish, in her case, a de facto parentage because they weren't married. But, that was sort of what we had to do. And so there's ways around it, and you hope that you have facts like that, but you don't
Right.
want to be in that position because, her relationship with her child was jeopardized for a while.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like worth the unsexiness, like dirt before you get
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah,
Before
just for peace
to
of mind,
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's
Mhm.
kind of like not comparing the two, but almost like a life insurance policy, right? Like we don't want
Yes.
to,
Mhm.
think about, what would happen, God forbid, if our spouses, you know, died. But, we do have to set ourselves up. We have to think in those terms. And I think that when it comes to marriage, like outside of life insurance, there are just so many nuances to things that we really need to think about. And that's why I love conversations like this. Like, even though it's in the context of like divorce and like after the marriage is already like in the process of dissolving, it's still like getting the word out there that like, hey, there are these things that we
Right.
should be thinking about either next time around, or if somebody who, hasn't gone through it yet, maybe it makes them think. So I just think it's so important.
Yeah, it really is. And I'll just say too, it protects your children as well.
Yeah.
A lot of people who are in same-sex relationships or LGBTQ plus, they might not have very supportive family members.
Yeah.
That's extremely common. And so I'm
Mhm.
lucky that I do. But, in my instance, if I were to die, I want my son to inherit from me. And if he wasn't adopted by me, my parents could check, my parents are very supportive. But in this example, my
Right.
parents could challenge that, or my siblings or something like that. And I would imagine that would happen to a lot of people. And I don't want my kids to have to go through that on top of losing a parent, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's just easily avoidable.
Yeah.
Yeah. If people know,
Right.
and kind of like related, but like moving on from like a divorce in one relationship. So, and again, I think this applies to anyone. I
Mhm.
mean, a lot of people, I mean, we post a lot about not ever wanting to be married again. Like, I never ever want to share a home with another
Spoken from a
breathing.
married person. Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Like,
We've been there, done
never.
that.
Mhm.
Yeah, basically, like my new term is intermittent companionship. That's the term that I've coined to describe the kind of situation I'm seeking. But anyhow, that's I digress. But a lot of people do want to, after they get through divorce and rebuilding, and they're dating, and they want another, partner. And maybe that dating relationship leads to marriage, right? So what kind of protections does a person need to, consider, or do they just need to talk about, should they talk about in that situation? So now they're moving on with a new person.
Oh, Bethany, your sound cut out. Oh, can you hear her, Summer?
No, I can't.
Okay, let me. It's a shame because it looks like she's saying something really good.
Yeah. Well, I kind of know where she's going, and I can. This is a good way for me to talk about prenuptial agreements, which would be my pointer on there. Can you hear us? Because you cut out a little bit,
I'm
Bethany.
sorry, I
Oh,
I
that's
did
okay.
I did technical, but you got the question.
If I
Yeah.
jump in to say prenups, does that kind of address what you were saying? Yeah, a lot of people kind of on the Hillary on the life insurance
Mhm.
comparison, prenuptial agreements are similar. A lot of people don't like them because it makes it
Yeah.
seem like you're setting it up to fail. But it's really an insurance policy, and a lot of people, Bethany, like you're mentioning, do them in a second marriage, probably because they learned the first time around. And
Mhm.
my thing with prenups, there's a huge I think misunderstanding about them. You don't have to have a lot of money for them to be useful. I
Mhm.
had a
Yeah.
client who was a working guy. He was a school teacher. I mean, he had a good pension because he worked for the county, and he had worked, there 25, 30 years or something. And his wife, they had been married like 6 or 7 years, and she would not give up a piece of his pension. And he was, she really didn't, I won't get into the details, but she really
Right.
didn't deserve it. It really wasn't a marriage that was, had a lot of
Mhm.
quality to it. They should have just taken what they had and gone their own ways. I think he was even going to pay her some alimony or something. Um, but she really dug her nails in on this pension that he had worked for 25 or 30 years, I think.
Wow.
And had he had a prenup, just simply saying that if they were to get divorced, he got to keep his retirement and pension, it wouldn't have been an issue at all. I mean, he had to pay me a lot of money to negotiate this, when it really could have been, potentially go to trial. Thankfully, it
Right.
didn't, but it really could have been avoided by a prenup. And it's not a situation where he had really a ton of money to protect. It was just, it would have avoided a huge headache.
Yeah.
And so that's what I try to tell people about prenups is, although I understand how they, again, feel unsexy, and feel like a little bit of a, maybe like bad juju or something, it's really just an insurance policy, and it can save you from a huge headache down the road.
Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
almost like we need to change the name or something because the stigma
I
is
know.
still
It
so
needs a
there. Like,
rebrand. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. No, it does. It needs a rebrand. Exactly
Yeah. Like a
right.
marriage pregame or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Yes. I like that. Yeah.
I
Sounds
know
more
marriage
fun.
marriage pregame.
Yeah.
This is a great question to talk about. Like, let's just revise all the terminology.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And
While we're
so would you
breaking the
say,
stigmas.
Right.
yeah, while we're breaking all the stigmas because it's necessary.
Yeah.
So what about a postnup agreement? Like,
Yeah.
do you see that happen too? Because I mean, there are people that are like lurkers on our accounts, and they may think that, okay, I'm heading for divorce, or it could happen, and maybe they've been married 10 years. Like, is a postnup something that, when do people use that, or who's that for?
So postnups are for people who miss the boat on prenups, or maybe they have something, they acquire something after marriage that they want to keep separate. That happens too.
Okay.
And so, yeah, you can execute a postnup. The court really looks at a lot of different factors around it. And so when they're looking at the legitimacy, it's just really important in a prenup and a postnup, both parties have to be represented by separate attorneys. They cannot enter into that with the same attorney, because they have to have both of their interests, separate interests, acknowledged. I mean, that's a huge piece. And so if they're both represented and they're both, it's all well documented, it's all been explained to them, and they sign off on it, then yes, you can absolutely do a postnup. in order to protect a certain piece of property. Like I said, if it was acquired after the marriage, or if it's just something, hey, we were meaning to do this, but with wedding planning and everything, it just got too,
Sure.
hectic. You could do it that way too. Or some people will do a prenup and it's signed really close to the wedding. And a lot of lawyers won't even take it if it's like close,
Oh.
within 2 weeks of a wedding, because the court will examine if either one was under duress, right? And so if you have a 300-person
Hmm.
wedding and all this money invested, and it's finally like, fine, I'll sign it, like the court can determine that one person might have been under duress if it's challenged. So a
So
lot of times if that happens, people will kind of firm it up with a postnup afterwards, just to say, hey, we cut it to the wire, but we're reaffirming our intentions in a postnup.
interesting. So
Wow.
when is an ideal time then to have a prenup? I know this isn't like necessary. This is kind of like a rabbit hole, but I'm just really genuinely curious.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's fine to wait till after you're engaged. That's fine. I don't have a hard and fast rule. I don't do it if it's within 2 weeks.
Okay.
And even at that point, like, we should be signing it at the 2 week point. Like,
Right.
everything should have been thought out and drafted well before that. I always say, like, try to make sure that you're meeting with the attorney and doing all that like 6 months out at least.
Okay.
I mean, it just gives you enough time to,
Sure.
depending on if it's complicated or not, right? Like, if somebody has, like, if Taylor Swift's getting a prenup, like, she needs to be working on that, like, now,
Right. Like now. Yeah.
But, like,
Yeah.
if it's just a general, like, 6 months or so at least, like, having the conversation and getting it started.
Got it.
Great.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, we have a question from someone about
Okay.
premarital property.
Sure.
So the question is that protected without a prenup? I mean, I feel like I would answer anyhow. Yeah, is that protected?
It is. So a
Okay.
prenup is really, every state has its own laws about how property is to be divided amongst a married couple. A prenup is just saying, I don't want to go by those laws. I'm going to make my own decisions about how it's going to be divided, and here's what we're going to do, right? And I should note that you can't address custody or child support in a prenup. So we're only talking about property here, just as a
Okay.
side note.
Okay.
And so if you decide not to go the prenup route or postnup, that state law is going to determine how your property is split up. So I'll kind of talk about Maryland. So Maryland, everything acquired during the marriage is presumed to be marital property. There are 3 exceptions. Anything acquired by gift or inheritance, or anything that you had prior to the marriage, right? So that would just be like, or I'm sorry, anything you have prior to the marriage is carved out, and then anything that you get as a gift or inheritance, or anything that you can trace back to that source. So if you have something and let's say you put a down payment on a house, but you're already married, but you can trace it back to a premarital source, then that's going to be carved out. So the long and short of that question is yes, anything that you have prior to the marriage is separate property, regardless of a prenup. The problem is that if you what's called commingle the property, then it becomes marital. So it transmutes that property to marital. So you have to be very careful if you don't have a prenup. If you have a bank account and you put money from that bank account, or if you put your paycheck into that bank account after you're married, you've commingled that account. So that is now marital property. The court can't decipher what money was premarital, what money's marital. The whole thing's marital. So you have to be really careful. A prenup addresses all of that. Account 1, 2, 3, 4, that's premarital, or that's separate property, and then it's not even in question. And you can say, regardless of any commingling, right? Like, you can sign off on something being separate property if you have a prenup.
Okay. Wow. Like, I feel like, okay, we're gonna have to do a part two
I
Yeah, no,
know.
that was
interview with you.
long-winded, but all of that to say yes and no is my answer.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, because there's a lot of gray area like that's just
Yeah,
the nature of
yeah.
relationships and the nature of divorce. Well, one of the things I want to go back to in terms of talking about like LGBTQ plus individuals is, finding an attorney that, understands, our lives in a way that like other people may not.
Mm-hmm.
And so like what resources or what advice do you have for people, to really determine, one, if this is important to them and they want to have an attorney or anyone for that matter that that understands LGBTQ plus communities and issues. How do they find that? And even if the attorney or the professional is not necessarily a member of the LGBTQ plus community, but you want to make sure that that person, understands and has aligned values, how might a person approach that?
So in terms of resources, if they're looking specifically for a family law attorney, the National LGBTQ Bar Association, which I'm a member of, has a great directory. So you can literally just Google National LGBTQ Bar Association, and they have something called the Family Law Institute. It's just a subsidiary of the association, and there's a map of the United States on the website, and you can just click on any state, and they will show you all the affiliates, family law attorneys in that state, and that's for divorce law and also art law, like I talked about, assisted reproductive technology. So that's like your adoptions, surrogacy, family formation stuff. So that's just a good resource if you're specifically looking for a family lawyer that is affiliated with the LGBTQ Bar
Hmm.
Association, which means they're probably going to be queer competent, right? I mean, if
Right.
they're a member of that association. Um, Otherwise, I would say ask. I mean, if that's important to you, and it is important to a lot of people, I would, in a lot of times when you're picking an attorney, you're interviewing them. So to the extent that you're comfortable, just asking, have you ever represented a same sex, a member of a same sex couple? How did you navigate that in court? Like, what do you know about the judges in this area and how they view same sex relationships and parentage and things like that? If they don't have a lot of information on it, or if they feel squeamish or uncomfortable, that might be an indication that they're not going to tell your story very well.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would say in terms of just navigating how to find someone, um, you know, in terms of just speaking to them and seeing sort of how they respond and what their experience is in that area.
I think that's really great advice.
Mm-hmm.
How can people, if somebody is listening who's in Maryland and wants to
Mm-hmm.
find you,
Yeah.
how can they find you and start working with you?
So I work for a firm called Offit Kurman, OFFIT KURMAN. You can just Google me, Summer Abel, and my name is Summer, like the season, Abel, ABEL. And my email is on there. I have an Instagram, Summer P Abel. Welcome to DM me on there. It's just my family. I have a couple videos. I was doing some videos for a while on like celebrity divorces. It was kind of fun. So there's some
Oh,
like
that's
interesting
interesting.
topics in
Yeah.
there. It's not like queer oriented, but it's, sort of like gossipy celebrity divorces because there's no shortage of that whatsoever.
None.
But anyway, you can DM me on there, and yeah, I'm happy to talk to people, or if I can connect them with someone in another state, I'm happy to do that as well.
That
Great.
that would be wonderful. And
Yeah.
Offit Kurman is great because they do have offices in so many other
Yes.
places, but I imagine that your network is pretty vast as well because of how you're connected to like the bar organizations and things like that.
Yes, absolutely. And I wanted to plug a couple other things too.
Yeah.
Um, just in terms of resources and support groups, there's a good organization called rainbows.org. And that's a national sort of website, and they have a lot of resources, state specific, and also just like books, podcasts, things like that. And I'm plugging on there all the time, and they always have tons of things for people who are going through a separation, how to talk to your kids about it, especially if you have kids in the same sex relationship, and how to talk about donors and things like that. So I think that's just a good website to kind of look into. And then another rainbow one, Connecting Rainbows. That's for family formation. So again, if you're looking for somebody in your state that does family formation, or they have estate planning on there too, for LGBTQ plus members, that's a good one to go to as well. So rainbows.org or Connecting Rainbows is another good one.
Right.
Perfect. I dropped that in the chat, and we're going to do a follow-up post because you have given us so much really great like insight and
Oh,
advice. I
I'm
mean,
glad.
honestly, this is rich. Like I'm going to be studying this recording for all the nuggets. But
Oh,
before we
wonderful.
go, I really do need to know, like, what is your favorite celebrity divorce to dissect? I mean, like,
Oh
let's do
gosh.
can we do it here? I don't want to put you on the spot, but like
Yeah, well, it got
I did.
really, no, yeah, it's fine. It got really sad because he passed away, but the Kelly Clarkson one was really juicy for a while because she was paying her husband, and again, he just passed, which is tragic, but
Yeah.
before that happened, it was really nasty, and she was paying him, gosh, I think I did a post on it. I think it was like $280,000 a month in alimony. I mean,
Oh
something
my gosh.
outrageous. Obviously, she's good for it, but
Right.
and then the child support was like, I think something she'd probably consider measly, like $40,000 a month. But he was really like getting so much money from her, and his stepmother is Reba, which I think is so funny. And I guess not that Reba like pays for his lifestyle, but I just thought that was funny that he like had this like extremely famous step parent. So that was a really juicy one for a while because that went on for kind of a long time.
Yeah,
Jeez Louise.
I knew she was paying him a lot, but I didn't know it was that much.
Yeah, it was a lot, and she's
Like,
not anymore. Although it's sad that he passed away,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Whew.
yeah, but I mean, what was he even doing with that?
I
I
know.
mean, what?
It's like who needs that much money, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that just was petty. Like he's just being petty
Yeah, and
because
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, and to say, and that's alimony. So alimony and spousal or alimony and child support are different. Alimony supports your lifestyle as, an individual. So it's like, being married to her afforded him this great lifestyle. The 280 a month was what he needed to keep up that lifestyle separate from paying for the kids. That was
Right.
only 40,000 a month. So it was kind of crazy
Jeez.
that just the amount to sort of prop him up to her level was 280,000 a month.
man,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wild.
Okay. All right, one last question because we got to do J Lo and Ben. Just real quick,
I
like
did a
high
video on them
points.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because I mean that's just wild. And like, and again, we're gonna do a follow
A
up with you
never
because
ending
eventually we need to.
story.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We need to talk about Nicole Kidman and all that, but
Oh
that'll
God.
be the next one. But J Lo and Ben, like real quick, like I hope they had a prenup,
They
right? I
didn't.
mean,
They didn't. And you know what?
Really?
There
what?
it was so I posted a video on them and I think it was 2 seconds long and I was like, what is going on in this case? And like that was it. And then I like did a follow-up later. But it was so confusing because she filed without a lawyer, which is like why? Why would she not have a legal
Right.
team? That made no
And
sense.
you're
So
J Lo. I mean, you can afford one, clearly.
exactly.
Like,
Like she went to the courthouse and filled it out by pen and it was very odd. I have no
What?
idea why she did that. And yeah, there was no prenup. I mean, I think sometimes, or I at least see the argument where you get to a point in your life where you have so much money that it's like, what is he gonna do? Like take a piece of her, like he has just as much as she does,
right.
but you
Right.
never know. And they're so wealthy that they're we're older, they're both in their second marriage. I did not understand why they didn't just take that step. And there was a rumor, so she had that tour that she wound up canceling because it didn't sell enough tickets, but there was kind of a rumor, at least in the legal hive mind, that like she didn't want to generate a bunch of money while she was going through a divorce because that was all going to be marital property. So she kind of stamped out that flame, so that it couldn't be
Interesting.
part of the divorce. That's never been substantiated, but that would certainly make sense if
Yeah.
that's why.
Wow.
Yeah, but Nicole Kidman, I want to get back to doing my celebrity videos because they were sort of fun to do. But yeah, Nicole Kidman would be a good one to cover because that one was pretty
Oh
shocking.
my gosh. Well, maybe we can have you back to do
Yeah,
like, yeah, we can like vote on which celebrities we wanna deep dive into because
dissect
I
them.
would love that.
Yeah, that'd be fun for sure.
That would
Yes.
be so fun. Okay, let's definitely do it. Oh, this is exciting. Well, Summer, thank you so much
Yeah,
for being
thank
here.
you.
Thank you both. This was so much fun.
It
Good,
really
good,
was.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, we appreciate the work that you do, and how you show up, as your authentic self. That is inspirational for all of us.
awesome. Thank you so much. That's very nice to hear. I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
All right, everyone. Good
Have a good
night.
night. Thank
All right.
you.
Bye.
Bye.